And we're live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the local version of Western New York Independent Living's 2020 Meet the Candidates Day. I'm Todd Varrick, Chief Policy Officer, and with me again is Mark Shaw, Disability Rights Advocate from Independent Living of Niagara County.
Hi,
And we're going to do this introduction all over again just as soon as the real-time captioners get the idea that we're speaking. There we go. So, welcome back to the local version of Western New York Independent Living's 2020 Meet the Candidates Day. I am Todd Varrick, Chief Policy Officer at Western New York Independent Living, and with me is Mark Shaw, Disability Rights Advocate at Independent Living of Niagara County. Say hi, Mark.
Hi, everyone.
All right. Unlike Tuesday, we have a much shorter and I think probably just as interesting slate of candidates today. We do have 3 candidates appearing live with 3 people providing videotapes for us and a half-hour presentation by the people at Disability Rights New York on how to do accessible voting. So, backstage once again is Jillian Moss, and Jillian is doing all of our logistical work. So I'm going to ask Jillian if DRNY is backstage yet, and wait for my response. Oh, there she is, Helen.
Hi, I'm so sorry I was late. I just came from a work Halloween Zoom meeting, so I had to go and take off my Chucky Rugrats costume quickly.
Oh, there was a Trekkie Rugrats costume? We're sorry we missed it.
I almost kept it on, and then I was like, I'll err on the side of caution here.
All righty. This is Helen Hellmuth from Disability Rights New York. You work in the PAVA unit. PAVA stands for?
Protection and Advocacy for Voter Access.
There we go. And the next half hour or so is for you to talk about how to do accessible voting, right?
Yes. So
wonderful. Thank you for coming.
Of course, always.
Thank you.
Of course. I'm not sure. Okay, I am able to screen share. I'm just grabbing my presentation quickly. You know how back-to-back meetings go. In the meantime, does anyone have any initial questions for me about voting or voting access?
So that means for the folks on the feed, you want to type into the Facebook or YouTube chat windows any questions you have for Helen about concerns about casting your ballot, because she's even a greater expert on this area than we are. Helen, just to make sure you know, we're doing real-time captioning here.
Okay.
And your screen sharing might interfere with the real-time captioning. So
that's fine. I won't share the screen then. I'll just try to pull up my own slides for reference, but because my computer is going so slow, I'm going to go off the top of my head, try and give everyone as much information as they can digest. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I'm happy to ask. Also, Todd, if you think of any questions as I'm talking, interrupt me, and I'm happy to answer.
Well, you get started, and then we'll play off.
Wonderful. So, as you know, well, little background on me. My name is Helen Hellmuth. I'm a senior advocate at Disability Rights New York, and I've been a voting access advocate for 5 years now. So I've got a little bit of experience in the area of accessible voting. For this coming election, which is Tuesday, there are more ways than ever that voters can cast their ballot. Unfortunately, it's already too late to request an absentee ballot or an accessible absentee ballot. The deadline to do so was the 27th. However, if if you did request an absentee ballot or accessible absentee ballot, there are more ways this year to return them than previous years. So previously, you would need to mail in your absentee ballot, but this year, all early polling places and polling places on election day are serving as drop box stations, secure drop box stations. So you're able to skip the lines that are crazy this year and just deliver your ballot and drop it off. Voters may also not know about early voting. So this year is the second year that early voting has been around in New York State. And the way it works is there are select polling places open for select hours the 10 days leading up to the election. And excluding New York City, you can go to any early polling place in your county to cast your vote. In New York City, you must go to an assigned polling place, which you can find on the New York City Board of Elections website. I personally chose to mark my ballot early this year. If you decide to do that, be sure to check the hours and the locations, because not every polling place is open and they're not open all day. It's only for select hours. And then lastly, there is voting on election day, as we are all used to, probably most familiar with. And the polling places are open across the state from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And you must, if you vote on election day, you must vote at your assigned polling place. You can't go to any polling place in your county. You have to go to the one assigned to you, which you can, oh, I love that little, that prompt at the bottom that says free rides to the voting, call Wynell. That's awesome. I digress. So you must go to your assigned polling place if you choose to vote on election day. Another important note that I'm going to throw in here is if you are someone who requested an absentee ballot, but you never received it for some reason, or you just decide that with all the news about the United States Postal Service, if you're hesitant to mail in your ballot or anything like that, you can still choose to go and vote during early voting or on election day. I'm going to say that one more time. Even if you requested an absentee ballot, if you didn't receive it, or you received it and you decided that you don't want to vote that way, you can choose to vote early or on election day. The way New York State is set up is that before any absentee ballots are counted, the Board of Elections has to go through the poll books to see who voted in person. And so if you voted in person, I try not to say discard anymore because I was corrected once. If you decide to vote in person, they take your absentee ballot and then put it in a secure box and don't look at it. It's not counted. The deadline to return an absentee ballot is election day. So it's the last day you have to turn in an absentee ballot if you choose to do that. And I'm also going to talk now about the accessible voting equipment at the polls. The accessible voting equipment in New York State is referred to as a ballot marking device, or BMD. It's called a ballot marking device because that's exactly what it is. It's a device that marks your ballot. So it serves as, like, rather than marking your ballot with a pen, if you have a disability that makes it so you can't read the ballot, you can't hold a pen to physically mark the ballot marking device has adaptive features that make it so you're able to mark your ballot privately and independently. If you are blind or low vision and you have trouble seeing or reading, in fact, they the ballot marking device will read the ballot to you with headphones, so you don't need to read it yourself.
Helen,
Yes.
because of the diverse area that we have up here in the county, we actually have two kinds of BMDs to talk about.
Okay.
So I wanted to take a minute to describe the difference for our fellow voters.
Yeah, definitely. I believe Erie County uses an AutoMark, correct?
Correct.
And everyone else uses Dominion?
Yes.
Okay.
And the difference on those guys is the AutoMark, when you go into Erie County, they're going to give you a ballot just like normal. You're going to go in, you're going to sign in, they're going to give you a ballot. You're going to go to the BMD, feed the ballot into the front of the machine. It's going to read the ballot for you and present the races one at a time. And you can either navigate using a set of keys, there's a sip and puff for those people that can't use keys, or you can touch the screen. It also provides audio feedback on the races one at a time. You select them, then you move on to the next race and select the next person, and you do it step by step until your ballot's done, right?
Yes.
The Dominion machine, when you go there, they're not going to give you a ballot. They're going to actually kind of walk you to the back part of where everybody goes to submit all of their ballots, and they're going to hand you something that looks like a PlayStation controller. And there's going to be a screen that's going to come up that's going to look just like what your ballot would look like, or approximately that. And you're going to go through and select the ones you want and highlight them. I think the color is yellow still. Okay. And when you get them all done, there's going to be a button you're going to push, and the machine will print the ballot for you entirely with the marks already on it. And then you go around to the other side and slip it into the machine. Okay. Two different kinds of machines, but both provide all of the accessibility features that federal law requires. Now you're good, because we took care of all the differences. Sorry.
No, don't apologize. I always appreciate when someone is able to describe the Dominion device, because I live in Albany County. I use an AutoMark, and so I'm much more familiar with the AutoMark ballot marking device. So you're able to vote using a ballot marking device privately and independently. You do not need to have a disability to use the machine. Anyone can use it. And I'm going to go through some important points about the ballot marking device that self-advocates can use to empower themselves and really know your rights. If you ask to use a ballot marking device at your polling place, a poll worker cannot ask you about your disability. They can't say that it is a machine only for people with disabilities. They cannot say that it is, they can't stop you from using the machine. And when you use the ballot marking device, there is a chance, as with any technology, that there might be a malfunction of some sort. A common one we hear about is the ballot marking device does not have any ink. For whatever reason, the boards of elections, that seems to be a common oversight. And
these are inkjet printers, right? So they either run out of ink or the ink dries in the capsule.
That's what it is.
And doesn't come out.
That's what it is. It's that the ink dries up, I think, is more accurate. And so you may, when I encourage people to use the BMDs, I always preface with, but just be aware that there may be an issue. We've seen times when the ballot marking devices are not plugged in or turned on, or a voter may need to use the device and the poll workers aren't sure how to provide assistance. How you respond to these barriers is completely up to you. You can choose to wait and say, I'd like to wait for a technician to come and fix this machine, and then I'd like to mark my ballot on the ballot marking device. Sometimes they have multiple ballot marking devices at each polling place, so you can ask to use the other one that's available. Or if you're human and in a rush, like many of us are, you can ask for assistance marking your ballot. Poll workers are required to help mark your ballot if you need that assistance, or you can get help from any person that you choose besides your boss or a representative from your union if you work for a union. And I'll close with how you respond is completely up to you. You can either wait to use the machine or ask for assistance. But if you run into any problems, please call me. DRNY, we help people file what are called HAVA administrative complaints, which is a formal complaint process that allows people to report barriers, accessibility barriers to the BMD, and the County Board of Elections office must respond through a hearing process that's overseen by the State Board of Elections office. There's also Attorney General complaints that you can fill out. It's called the Attorney General Hotline, but really it's a complaint form. And if you run into any problems on election day, DRNY, we will be holding a hotline. Our hotline has been open because of early voting.
What's the number of the hotline?
The hotline number is 518-432-7861. And my email address is Helen, HELEN .Helmuth, HELLMUTH @drny.org. And the reason I say to just, if you have a problem, to call me or email me is because I would be able to talk with you about the exact barrier that you had and figure out which complaint process makes most sense for the barrier that you experienced. Because the HAVA complaint process is really primarily for the ballot marking device. It protects people in their right to a private and independent vote. So if there's an issue with the BMD that makes it so you cannot vote privately and independently, that would be the complaint process. If there's a barrier where there's steps to get into the polling place and there's not a ramp, that may be more of an Attorney General complaint. So I would love to hear from you all if you run into any problems. And if you don't, if you have a great voting experience, we love hearing about that as well. We will often write letters to the County Board of Elections offices when we see something exceptional done. A couple of years ago, I believe it was in Monroe County, poll workers, they had a sign language interpreter at all of their polling places, which we thought was incredible. And so we just sent them a letter and said, thank you for doing this. This is more of what we want to see.
Now, for the people that are listening to this feed who are part of West New York Independent Living, the Public Policy Department is also available to call if you've got an immediate voter access problem, because we are boots on the ground and we can call the local Board of Elections and go to the polling place if there's a problem. We start to take those complaints at 6 a.m. You just give my office a call at West New York Independent Living Extension 101 and leave me a message. And then I will call you back, find out what the problem is, and see if we can do something to fix it. If we can't, or if the problem is what we call severe and complicated, we will send you directly to Helen at DRNY. We'll get Helen right on the phone.
Love
Right.
that.
And we've done that in the past with some successful complaints, haven't we?
Yes, and as soon as you started talking about your hotline, I thought it was a couple of years ago where someone called Western New York Independent Living, and then Western New York Independent Living called me, and together we were able to resolve the issue. So definitely we're all on the same team here. We all have the same goal of accessible voting for everyone.
I do want to give people one more chance if they've got any questions. I mean, a couple questions that I'm going to give Helen just so that you guys get the information. If you ask for assistance from a polling place worker to help you fill out your ballot, are you going to have like two people standing behind you? Does it still need to be like one person from each party?
That is the rule, as I understand it, is if you ask for help from a poll worker, they'll send one person in the booth with you from each political party as like a checks and balance so that they're being held accountable by someone else. So if you ask for help, they should send two people in. If they don't, ask them to.
Right. Okay. And for those people that might not have finished their ballots yet, because we're helping deliver them if they can't be put in the mail, how about, is there anything about filling out your ballot properly or preparing your ballot for transport that folks might want to know?
Yes. Great questions, Todd. To have your absentee ballot counted, when you receive an absentee ballot, you'll get two envelopes. One is a smaller inner envelope and one is a larger outer envelope, which the smaller inner envelope will go in. And when you fill out your ballot, you will put it in the small envelope and then seal that envelope. From what I understand, the only way your ballot is like automatically spoiled and it's not counted, you can't even address it, is if the inner envelope is not properly sealed. It can be sealed with tape, so you don't need to lick it, but just make sure that it is sealed. You can't just like tuck it in. It must be sealed. And then you place that smaller inner envelope that is sealed with your ballot in it in the larger envelope, and then you seal that as well. And that's it. If you got assistance filling out your ballot, you will need to have a witness sign the inner envelope affirming that they helped you fill out your ballot. You'll need to date the inner ballot, and those are really the big ones, is making sure it's sealed properly.
You know, it's a question we get asked, especially with there being a lot more absentee ballots out there this year than have been there in previous election seasons. Another interesting question that I got is, what happens if you cast a ballot and then the voter dies?
Oh gosh.
Now you might not know this answer, Helen, but I do because I researched it.
I'm going to defer to you. I've never been asked that question.
Absolutely. But believe it or not, that was a question that came in after last time. So for those people that worry about that sort of thing, if you've got relatives in hospice or in nursing homes and you're worried about them casting their ballots, at the time they write and seal the ballot is valid no matter what happens to the voter. As long as it's turned in prior to the deadline, the intent of the voter was to cast that ballot. Therefore, intent will be carried out and the ballot will be counted.
That would have been my guess, but I'm happy to hear that that's accurate. And with the little time that I have left, I do want to throw out just some interesting statistics that may give people peace of mind. This election, we're hearing a lot about mail-in voter fraud. The likelihood, I wish I had my slides in front of me, but I'll be able to pull the statistics. The likelihood of mail-in voter fraud is 0.00006%. That's a study done over the last 25 years of mail-in voter fraud, 0.00006%.
Yeah, there have been 43 instances of voter fraud, 43, over the past 15 years.
Yeah, and the likelihood of you being struck by lightning in your lifetime is 0.0007%. So you are more likely to get struck by lightning in your lifetime than there is to be mail-in voter fraud. If that gives people any sort of sense of security about the mail-in election process.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the process for counting ballots, because our viewers should know what I think is going to happen on election night is not going to be the same as the past few election nights.
Absolutely not.
You're not going to get somebody who's going to predict that New York's ballots are going to go to Biden an hour after the polls close. That's not going to happen. One of the common things we hear at West New York Independent Living is that they only count absentee ballots in the event of a tie or a close race. That's not true, is it, Helen?
No, that is incorrect. You are right, Todd, that we're not going to have results on election night. I can say that pretty confidently, because as I had mentioned at the beginning, in New York State, before any absentee ballots are counted, they need to go through all of the poll books to see who voted in person. And there are millions more people voting by mail this election than have ever before. In New York State, we're working through it, but we're not veterans at this whole large vote by mail process. So it's gonna take longer for the ballots to be counted. Absentee ballots are always counted. It's not just in the event of a tie or a close race. If you mail in your ballot, it will be counted. It's just going to be counted after the poll books have been looked through.
So the important thing to remember is that this process that Board of Elections has to go through is called election certification. They got to go through all the books. They got to kind of find out who voted in person, invalidate ballots if they voted in person rather than voting by mail. There is a category of ballot we haven't talked about. It's so rare that I don't necessarily want to bring it up, which is what's called voting by affidavit. And that's for those people that desperately want to vote so bad, but may not have registered in their new polling place, but they were registered in their old one, right?
Yeah.
So you have to fill out a special ballot for that, and they put it in an envelope, and then they verify that you live where you say you're going to live, and then they'll count it, right?
Yeah. In the provisional or the affidavit ballot, also known as a provisional ballot, you'll hear the use words interchangeably. That's a really important tool for self-advocates to have in their back pocket, because if you show up to vote on election day and you know you're registered, but for whatever reason the poll worker says your name isn't in the poll book, or oh no, you can't actually vote, you can ask for an affidavit or a provisional ballot, mark it as you would, and then, as Todd said, they go back to the Board of Elections office once the day is over and they verify your voter registration status. For example, I just got married and changed my last name.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I checked my voter registration probably 15 times before election day to make sure that my name was changed on the registration list. But I was prepared because, again, these poll workers are human. The Board of Elections are human. I was prepared for them to say that my name wasn't in the poll book, and I was ready to ask for a provisional ballot if that were the case. So last resort, if you go to the polls and they say that you can't vote, ask for a provisional ballot.
Just making a note for my people in logistics in the back. My apologies. Any more last opportunity for questions in the feed for Helen? As people know, this is also going to be in our YouTube webpage. So if you want to tell somebody that we had this conversation about it, they can come to our YouTube page and look at this and watch this anytime up till Election Day. Also, we're going to change the chroma key again to remind people where they can send voter complaints. She's going to switch that. There we go. Any questions for Helen? We'll give them a minute.
Yeah.
No,
And-
while we're giving them a minute, I just want to say thank you once again for all your help and hard work.
Of course. Thank you guys for putting this together. This is great and especially timely.
Okay, apparently I don't have any questions, but that's okay. Because like I said, people will watch this and people will call us because you know how much they love to call us. DRNY is a critical component of being able to make sure that we can advocate for ourselves to protect our freedom. Helen, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Todd.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
I hope I don't have to talk to you on Election Day.
No.
I hope not, but we'll see each other again soon.
Yes. Talk soon. Thanks, Todd.
Hold on. Wait a minute.
Thank
Wait a
you.
minute. There might be a question. Hold on.
Fabulous.
DRNY is located where?
We represent the entire state of New York. So no matter where you live, you can call the hotline number and you're covered. Our physical offices are located in Albany, Rochester, and Brooklyn, but we're all working remotely right now. So
Wonderful. And yeah, and we have your contact information up on the scroll, so this is good. All right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I got all the questions from our question master, who put it in a place I wasn't looking. This is what happens. Thank you again for coming, Helen. We appreciate it.
always talk to you guys soon.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All righty. Next up on our hit parade, while I go to my schedule, is Mr. Sharon. William Sharon, running for sheriff of Genesee County.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
We can hear you very well.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Okay. So, never having been to meet the candidacy before, you get about 2 or 3 minutes to talk about any general planks that you might have in your campaign, and then we'll have some questions for you. So, take it away.
Okay. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Bill Sharon. Been with the sheriff's office for 43 years. I started with the sheriff's office when I was 18 years old. I started as a civilian dispatcher, a 911 dispatcher. I've come up through the ranks of the sheriff's office. It wasn't long after I started here that I recognized this was a calling of mine. It was to be involved in law enforcement and serving the public. Following 911 dispatch, I had an opportunity to work in the jail, working with locally committed individuals along with state-ready inmates. Following the jail, I went to Basic Academy and joined the Road Patrol of the Sheriff's Office. Following, or as a next step up, I was promoted to Sergeant of Road Patrol, where I was a supervisor of a particular shift of deputies patrolling the county of Genesee and taking responsibility for that shift. 1989 came along and Genesee County wanted to address the drug trafficking problems here in the county. So then Sheriff Mejia and Under Sheriff Garrigan approached me about starting up a drug task force. So I I grew that task force from myself into a team of 4 to 6 people from throughout the county, and working with all counties and task forces throughout Western New York. I stayed in the drug task force for until 1993, when I was asked to take over road patrol for Genesee County Sheriff's Office in the position of chief deputy. I ran the road patrol for about 3 years. The undersheriff then retired, and Sheriff Mayha asked me to join him as second in command of the sheriff's office as his undersheriff, and I served in that role till 2016, when Sheriff Mayha retired, and I ran for sheriff, and I'm up for my second term.
So the big question, the kind of default question we're asking folks in law enforcement, because people with disabilities have a high level of interaction with law enforcement, and that we've all been concerned about nationwide about interactions with law enforcement. We're talking about changing the way law enforcement is done. So I wanted to get an opportunity for you to respond to what you think about changes you'd like to see in law enforcement.
Well, right now we are in the initial process of going through reimagining law enforcement in New York State. I do sit on that committee along with my undersheriff. What I think we need to do is we need to have a better dialogue with the people that we serve. Get their input on how they see law enforcement, the problems that they see, try to educate them on the duties of law enforcement and the perspective of law enforcement officers, and then come up with any changes that we may need to make here at the sheriff's office and in fact through law enforcement throughout the country. Obviously, this is a time of change. I'm open to change. I believe in the good exchange of information. Let's face it, I'm an elected official. I represent the people. I answer to all the people of Genesee County. If there's dissatisfaction with the way the police are doing it or doing our jobs, then we need to get input from all the stakeholders involved and try to make change that is acceptable to everybody.
So a question that came from the feed is to talk about the differences in your responsibilities as sheriff with, say, the Batavia Police Department or some other law enforcement entity. What are the responsibilities of the sheriff?
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought it out. The difference being is the sheriff has many different facets of the organization. The most common, obviously, is that people recognize is road patrol. We do maintain a road patrol here in Genesee County. We serve the public. We answer complaints. We investigate crimes. We investigate the accidents. We do public service. We try to serve the public the best we can. It's a very demanding job for the men and women out there on the streets. But also, as sheriff, I'm required to operate the county jail. By statute, I am tasked with the care and custody of any individual that is committed by a judge to the Genesee County Jail. This means all their health concerns, their educational concerns, their well-being, to put it in a nutshell. It's quite a daunting task. As you may have read in the papers, we have a very old jail. The initial part of our jail, the front portion of it, was built in 1902. We put an addition on in 1984. We are now under mandates from the Commission of Corrections to make improvements to our facility, which really aren't feasible to that facility. So we're in the process of looking at building a new jail. We're looking in the range of about $60 million to build that facility. Mm-hmm. I'm also responsible for running the 911 center. The 911 center handles every request for emergency services in the county. Now, that means not only police services of the sheriff's office, but the Batavia Police, the Leroy Police, Corfu Police, the state police, and then every fire department, emergency medical responders, and ambulance services within the county. I'm also responsible for animal control. We have an animal shelter here in the county. I have been tasked by the Genesee County Legislature to run that operation. So we have 2 individuals that are assigned there to handle missing dogs, loose dogs, stray dogs, cats, and so forth. Again, probably people don't realize, but that does fall underneath the sheriff's office. I'm also have an investigative division and the drug task force that I mentioned to you. It's a countywide drug task force made up of individuals from the sheriff's office, the Batavia Police Department, and the Leroy Police Department. And again, they work not only in Genesee County, but they work in Western New York with fellow officers that are assigned to task forces, so forth. We also have what we call Genesee Justice. Genesee Justice is a division that deals with alternatives to incarceration and also victims assistance. Alternatives to incarceration include release on their own recognizance, release under supervision, or released under some type of special restraints or conditions that the individual may meet. The victims assistance deals with individuals, obviously the victims of crimes, which often are overlooked, and helping them cope with whatever the situation may be that they and how they became a victim. This includes helping them through the court processes, the possible testimony, and providing them with information and guidance on monetary relief that may be available through the state. We also, under the Sheriff's Office, we have the Child Advocacy Center. God bless these people. These are the people that deal with the sexually abused and physically abused children of our county. In fact, the Child Advocacy Center here in Genesee County services not only Genesee County, but Orleans County and Wyoming County. Years ago, it was recognized that the unfortunate thing was a child victim, let's say of a crime, was telling their story many times, first to the police and then to the prosecutor and also service providers and so forth, and the examination people. At the CAC, what we call the CAC, it's one-stop shopping. That child tells their story one time to try to alleviate the impact that situation has on the child. They don't need to be telling that story time and time again. It's almost referred to as re-victimization.
Right.
So,
right. That's a very involved description of what a sheriff's office does, and I want our viewers to kind of remember similar things when some of our other county sheriffs are on later today. I do have one last question for you because our 10 minutes flies by.
Yeah.
Recently, there was a change in the civil rights law that mandated transparency for records from police departments for misconduct. The assembly bill number wouldn't necessarily matter to you, but it's A2513 in the event you're interested. I have people on the feed wanting to know if you support that.
I do. As a matter of fact, myself and my undersheriff at the beginning of our campaign here, we opened up our files completely to the public to take a look at in the interest of transparency, especially at our level of the administrators of the sheriff's office. The sheriff is referred to as the highest ranking law enforcement officer in the county. I think it's crucial that the public has a clear understanding of my career, disciplinary actions, and so forth. So I do favor it. I think that there needs to be some modifications to it. There's still some debate on whether or not a false accusation or unproven accusation should be released. That will be handled in the court system. But all in all, I totally believe in transparency. I think we as police officers, we're serving the public, and the public has the right to know what their law enforcement is all about.
Thank you so much for that answer. And thank you for spending 10 minutes with us and talking to us about your candidacy. I wish you the best of luck.
Yes,
you very
good
much.
luck.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming in today.
And I see you've got Mike Filicetti coming on.
I believe so.
Yes.
I moved my schedule. There we go.
Okay.
Yes, he's next.
Tell Mike I said hello. We served as undersheriffs
Alright.
together. And
He can hear you,
hey, Mike.
but we can't hear Mike.
No, we can't.
Mike, you're muted, I think. There we go.
There we go. Now I'm ready to go.
There we go.
All right, Mike. Good luck to you.
You too. Good job.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Sharon. We're gonna go right to what is referred to as acting sheriff Mike, running for Niagara County sheriffs. Just like with Bill, we want to give you 2 or 3 minutes to talk about whatever general planks on your campaign you'd like, and then we'll have some questions for you. And since you've been waiting backstage, you might know what the answers to some of them are already.
I made a couple of questions, yeah. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my experience. I've been doing this for 27 years now. I had a little bit of a humble start. In 1993, I was sponsored to go through the Law Enforcement Academy. That's a nice way of saying I went for free. So I went through the academy. I just had a real desire to do the job. I wanted to be a police officer since I was a kid. So I went through the academy. Upon graduation, I worked 3 part-time jobs. I worked for the Parks Police in the summer. I worked for the Village of Lewiston Police Department and the Town of Lewiston Police Department. But, you know, honestly, at that point, I would have done the job for free as well. I loved it. I believed in what I was doing. Ultimately, I went full-time in Lewiston. And in 1997, I put in my application and asked for a lateral transfer to the Niagara County Sheriff's Office. And then Niagara County Sheriff Tom Beeline gave me my shot at my dream job to be a deputy sheriff. And, you know, at the end of the day, if that's as far as I got, that was my dream job, to be a deputy sheriff here in Niagara County. As luck would have it, I studied hard, took some tests. In 2007, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant, and I worked on the afternoon shift for a while. In 2008, I was promoted to the rank of captain, and I had my own shift. I commanded the midnight shift, which probably was one of the, you know, I don't want to say high points because this is a high point as well, but it was a lot of fun having my own shift. And I felt like I was really making a difference in the community, having a command of an entire shift at the sheriff's office. In 2010, I moved to the administrative role as a captain as well. They gave me some more insight into the operations of the sheriff's office. I started learning a lot of the things that went on behind the scenes here that I wasn't aware of. In 2012, I was appointed to the undersheriff's position by then Sheriff Jim Vautour. So for 8 years, I was the undersheriff here at the sheriff's office. And really being the second in command, you really have a lot of control over the day-to-day operations of the sheriff's office, from budgeting to disciplinary problems to policies, procedures. So you're really hands-on, and you're kind of the guy behind the scenes running a lot of what goes on here. Sheriff Vautour retired at the end of last year, so I've been filling the acting role here at the sheriff's office, and I think it's changed a little bit for me. I'm still doing a lot of the things that I was doing because I don't have an undersheriff yet, but I also I'm the face of the sheriff's office a lot of times now, and that certainly changes your perspective on things, and it's certainly a different role and a challenging role than what I had before. So that's pretty much my experience in a nutshell. You know, moving forward, I will say, let's back up for a second. This year was challenging. You know, between COVID and police reform that we're working on, protests we had in our county, a spike in violent crimes. It's been a challenging year to be in law enforcement. So we've reacted to a lot of the things that are going on, and I look forward to moving into some new things in the coming months. And we're going to continue our accreditation. We're accredited in every area at our agency. So our law enforcement side of the house, our corrections, our dispatch center, our forensic lab, and our civil division are all accredited by New York State, which I think is important moving into the police reform realm especially. We're looking at expanding our jail programs. I'm a firm believer in making use out of the time that somebody is doing in our facility. And we also have a radio project going on right now to expand communications capabilities here in the county for all of our first responders, whether that's law enforcement, fire, EMS. A lot of people use our radio system and count on it, including school officials and highway departments. So it's critical that we make sure that that's the best that it can be for everybody.
Wonderful. Mark, this is your acting sheriff, so why don't you lead the questioning?
All right. How are you today, Mr. Felicetti? As far as people with individuals with disabilities, because there's such a high comorbidity of us as a population crossing paths in one way or another with the sheriff's department. How would you facilitate change to allow deputies to be better informed and better educated on different disabilities?
Great question. I first want to say that this topic hits near and dear to me. I have a daughter with intellectual disabilities, so this topic is near and dear to my heart, and I want to make sure that our people are doing the right things when they interact with people with disabilities. So in our basic academy class, every recruit, we're only required to do 6 hours of disability awareness training. We do 8 hours of disability awareness training, and we couple that in with some other training that focuses on disability and awareness training as far as in our missing persons part of our training. There's sections in there about people with disabilities and missing. We also make sure that we provide additional training above and beyond that 8 hours in the law enforcement academy. We have several deputies that have attended additional training in the area of disability awareness. And we also have instructors here on staff. I think another critical piece of training that many of our deputies have and more are being sent through in January is crisis intervention team training. That's not only applicable to disabilities, but it's also applicable in a lot of areas, mental health. So what I would say is I think that we need to make sure that our deputies have the tools in their toolbox to react appropriately. I think what we're giving them now is good. We can always do better. But I'm very encouraged by the way we're moving with the training for our road patrol people.
Alrighty. Mark, I have a question from the feed, so I'm not trying to interrupt you here, but I want to make sure we address it. I have a question in the feed here about how the sheriff's office might be addressing recent violence in Medina and Lockport.
Oh, great question. So Medina's in Orleans County, but Lockport is definitely in Niagara County. So what we realized early, probably around June or July, that we were seeing a spike in violent crime. Homicide rates in Niagara Falls were up 300%. Shooting incidents were up double-digit increases. And Niagara County is not unique. This is going on across New York State and across the United States. There's spikes in violent crime. So what do you do about it? Well, obviously, we have a gun problem. There's too many guns on the streets. So I got together with fellow police chiefs here in the county several weeks ago, and we've had the Niagara County Violent Crime Task Force has been in operation for about a month. And the objective of this task force was to go after the people through intelligence-led policing that are causing the problems, that have the guns, that are involved in the shootings, involved in the homicides. And in a matter of about 3.5 weeks, we've taken 30 illegal guns off the streets, made several arrests, a lot of narcotics, and we're trying to put a dent in it. Are we going to fix this problem in a month? No, absolutely not. But I think it's bigger than just making arrests. This is a community problem, and we need help from our pastors. We need help from community organizations to work together. It's a culture change. It's not just taking guns and making arrests. It's a culture change. So we're going to keep doing that. I think we need to obviously do everything we can from a law enforcement aspect, build community relationships to try to lower this. Obviously, I'd like to have no violence in the county, but we're going to keep working on it.
And just as a quick last question, because we're asking it of all the sheriff candidates today, what is your thought of transparency in police records, the change they just made to state law?
So I think it's important that the public trust law enforcement. The only reservation I have with this is the request for police records by certain individuals that are looking basically to obtain these records and do something inappropriate with those or use it for fodder on the internet. I think if they're used for official reasons to show that there's a problem in a law enforcement agency or there's an issue with an individual deputy, I understand that, and we should be taking care of that before it becomes a problem that the public has to worry about. So that's my stance on it. I understand it. We're complying with it. My only reservation is that they're used for the appropriate purpose.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to answer these questions. 10 minutes just lies by, doesn't it?
It sure does. I have so much more to say.
If anybody has, go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, and I want to thank the sheriff for reaching back out to me when I reached out to him on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, no problem at all.
For all of our candidates today and for the people on the feed, if you have a question that didn't come up while there was an opportunity for them to be here, you can send that to us, to either Mark or myself, and we'll make sure that the campaign gets that so that that can be answered. We absolutely want to make sure that if anybody has a question for you, that we get that to you. So thank you so much for spending time with us.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Best of luck on your campaign. Okay?
Thank you.
Wish you all the best.
All right. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to our next candidate now, which will be Mr. Soretto. John Soretto running for Niagara County District Attorney. There he is. John Soretto the second. I'm sorry. I keep forgetting the suffixes. And you're muted. Muted. There we go.
It's well, okay. My father has the same name. I went the Roman numeral route. I have so many Uncle Juniors. I just couldn't do that to my family.
I completely get it. As always, with Meet the Candidates Day, you get 2 or 3 minutes for general planks on your platform. Go right ahead. And then
Absolutely. First, I want to apologize. My allergies are kicking in. I don't know if it's the snow or what, but I disobeyed a cardinal rule for my mother, and I drank orange juice. She always said drink something clear, so I might be a little phlegmy at times. My name is John Soretto. I'm running for district attorney. I started off my legal career after law school. I graduated in 2012. Graduated, passed the New York State Bar. Immediately in 2013, I began working in the district attorney's office as an assistant. There, I prosecuted thousands of crimes. I was stationed in the city of Niagara Falls. There was 2 of us that handled all the general crimes that came through the county in the city of Niagara Falls. I also had office in North Tonawanda City Court, Wheatfield, Porter, Newfane. I'm probably going to forget a few. I had so many, but I was in a lot of our town courts as well as county court. After that, I went to private practice as a criminal defense attorney. I also do real estate, a lot of family court. I'm a licensed attorney for the child, where I represent children in custody, visitation, and neglect proceedings. I do a host of other genres of law, like civil court, where oftentimes there's money disputes. And now I'm running for district attorney. I do feel that we've gone far away from community outreach programs. Sorry, I stumbled there. Outreach programs. What I would like to do is meet with community leaders, meet with individuals within the communities. Every single community in our great county is different. They're facing a multitude of independent, unique issues. For example, Mr. Filicetti spoke as to the gun violence in the city of Niagara Falls. That's not an issue they're facing in the town of Newfane, for example. Their issues are going to be different. So I think the one way that we can figure all of this out and strategize is to meet with those community leaders and talk about the issues that they're currently facing. What led me to law was actually during undergrad, I was going for early childhood education. I grew up playing basketball at the boys club, the YMCA. I grew up in a very modest household. My dad worked at Tulip Corporation on Highland Avenue. I have 3 siblings. There was 6 of us in a 3-bedroom ranch. Cars were always hand-me-downs, very older. I was always wanted to be around children. I went to law school or undergrad first, got my degree in early childhood education, and then eventually a degree in criminology, sociology, and childhood deviance. And that led me around this route. Now, is your mic muted now?
I believe so.
Oh.
He is absolutely right. That is completely my fault. I muted my mic so as not to interrupt you. And
Well, I
started
certainly
talking.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Mark, you want to lead questions for Mr. Serrano, please?
Yes. So, what is the greatest asset you would bring to the office of the district attorney if you should be elected?
You know, the greatest asset that I bring, along with my experience, I believe, is my growth from childhood till now. The education that I've received with regards to sociology, I believe that I've personally have friends that have gone through the opiate epidemic. Those were my close personal friends. I am younger. I can relate more. I always tell everybody, do you know why criminals are so young? It's because when individuals start a life of crime, it's typically at a young age, right?
Yeah.
And we see those offenders still as youthful because there's only 3 ways out of a life of crime. You're either going to learn from those experiences and get out on your own. Otherwise, those individuals typically are incarcerated for longer terms, and when they get out, they're older and just don't want to do it. Or unfortunately, their lives are taken, whether it's from addiction or violent crimes. I can relate to our community. I can relate to these individuals. I can relate to our youth. And what I think that we need to do is get into our school systems, get into the boys club, get into the YMCAs, and show them that their role model can be an individual that has a college degree, that has an education, that's trying to put things back, positive energy back into the community, rather than the individual that's, let's say, hanging around on the corner at 2:00 in the morning.
Okay.
All right.
A question from the feed here, Mark. Mr. Serrano, what is your stance on having social workers and behavioral experts doing police response calls?
I think that's a great idea. If we have individuals that can understand, and this goes back to the sociological perspective, but if we have individuals that have a greater degree of knowledge, and those individuals can be placed on the forefront to assist, to oftentimes when an officer is brought to a call, they never know what to expect. Okay, so there's a heightened degree of awareness. So if we have ways to peacefully handle those situations, I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Mark, do you have another question for him? We've got time for one more.
All right. Also, um, what would you do, or would you be open to creating positions if they're not already positions created for individuals with disabilities in your office?
Again, wonderful idea. I would absolutely be up for that. I think that if you want to have a well-rounded office, the last thing I need is an office full of people that think just like me, right? Because we're going to be doing is heading in the same circles, same one-way direction. You need diversity. Diversity is what creates an office that works. Diversity brings new ideas. Those ideas can be, I want to be surrounded by individuals that do not think like me. Okay. Because I already think like me. We don't need any more of me. What we need are individuals that have different perspectives, different life experiences. Those individuals can then talk to me about some of these ideas, and that's how we can make a better office.
And one more from the feed, because we're having this kind of day today. Apparently, you're a popular guy. Do you believe the decision to charge lesser included offenses in criminal indictments should be returned to the grand jury? Apparently, the DA now charges the highest level of offense.
That is an interesting question. So when you're indicting a case, before a plea is even offered or considered, there's already been an evaluation as to the charges, okay, in order to stand muster. The reason that we have lesser included offenses is so that if we go to trial, it's not all or nothing, right? So you're bringing the highest charge and then another charge under. So for example, let's say an individual is charged with assault second. Assault second is a D-violent crime. You would also bring the charge of assault third, so that if the jury weighs the two charges and they say, well, we don't feel it's an assault second, but we do feel it's an assault third, that individual is not completely off the hook. Okay. If you remove the lesser included offense or charges, it's solely just the assault second. So if the assault second doesn't stand muster, that person's completely acquitted.
That's a wonderful answer and a great kind of description of the early part of the criminal justice process that you deal with as district attorney. That's all the time we actually have questions for. And I wanted to make sure that you knew how wonderful it is that we had you appearing live and answering questions today. Mark, anything last thing to say to our district attorney candidate?
No, thank you for coming, and thank you for being a part of our event, and thank you for reaching back out to me or responding to me when I reached out to you.
Anytime. And anybody can get a hold of me, soretto4da@gmail.com. One of the things that I truly believe in is transparency. I want to get out into the community. I want to talk to as many people as possible. I wish the next time that we meet, it'll be in person.
We do too. Trust us. All righty. Thank you so much for coming, sir.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Now, as he drops into backstage for our audience at home, the other three candidates we have appearing today are all done by video, so we're going to play those one at a time. But we do have an interesting wrinkle, because someone who missed our state day on Tuesday, based on your requests, because I got comments in the feed about making sure we asked for them, Mr. Conrad, running for Assembly in the 140th District, taking over for Robin Schimminger, sent a video for us. And we're going to do him first. Wait for a moment while Jillian makes arrangements. Yep, there we go. Can't hear him. My apologies for the technical difficulties, folks.
We had an issue with this morning on our meeting. I wonder if it's a little microphone look or something there by the play and pause button on the bottom of the screen or under the picture there.
Hi, Bill Conrad here, candidate for New York State Assembly for the 140th District. I want to start by saying thank you to the Western New York Independent Living Group for inviting me to the Meet the Candidates event. Although be it online, I couldn't make it. My teaching schedule and my commitment as a teacher and father and councilman I was unable to attend. I want to start by saying, of course, like many of you, I have many friends, family, and students who are persons with disabilities, and I've gained a strong understanding of the many challenges, struggles, and issues that they face on a daily basis. From fighting addiction to getting to work. Those struggles are real and need to be known. But I'm not going to sit here and make an entire speech filled with empty promises that we've unfortunately become so accustomed to in this age. I will, however, stand as my record as a town councilman, where we work with the disabled community to make sure that they have a voice in our community. And right now, we're building a disability community in the town of Tonawanda. We've worked on a complete streets initiative to make sure that our streets are walkable, that our crosswalks are ADA compliant. And we also have to make sure and advocate that those voices are not muffled or ignored in our community as they have been in the past. Just the other day, we noticed in the town that our early polling site might not be accessible for folks with disabilities. And we got to work by calling the Board of Elections and making sure that next year our polling locations for early voting are more accessible. So, if elected or not, as your assembly person, I promise, as I always have, to advocate to improve services for those with disabilities and to be a champion for those individuals with disabilities' rights. Because, as we all say here, it's easy to ignore, but it's not easy to fix. So thank you, and I hope to see you on Election Day.
A brief remark from Mr. Conrad. For those folks that are concerned about audio, because I know piping these pre-recorded messages through the feed, the audio might not be great. These are posted on our YouTube page for you to view yourself. Okay, and you can go there and find that because Jillian will put up the link again. There it is, scrolling across your screen. And she's going to move to Mr. Seaman, the opponent for Mr. Soretto in the district attorney's race, for his comments. Oh, no, wait. Hold on before he plays it. This is a little different. District Attorney Seaman did a pre-record with Mark and I, and we got an opportunity to ask him questions. So let's go directly to that. Okay. Greetings. Today we have Brian Seaman, candidate for Niagara County District Attorney. And for those people who might not be able to see me, this is Todd Varg, Chief Policy Officer at Western New York Independent Living, and Mark Shaw, Disability Rights Advocate for Independent Living of Niagara County. Say hi, Mark.
Hi.
All right, Brian, this is your opportunity to put your platform out for people with disabilities that might be watching. So take it away.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Thank you, Mark. Thanks, everyone, for having me here today. I appreciate it. My name is Brian Seaman, and I'm running for District Attorney here in Niagara County this year. I want to take just a couple minutes to tell you a little bit about myself, about my background, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. I was born and raised here in Niagara County. I actually grew up in Middleport, New York. Then when I was about 10 years old, moved to Lockport, New York, and then graduated from Lockport High School. I went to school, to college at the University of Notre Dame, and then I got my law degree from Loyola University Chicago Law School. I do have some experience working with people who have disabilities. When I was at Notre Dame, I had one summer, I did what they call a summer service project. There's a real emphasis on giving back and serving your community at Notre Dame. And this summer service project, what it is they have places all over the country who would like to have a college student volunteer. And I went down to the Center for Social Concerns there at campus, and I flipped through the book and looked at all the different projects that people who would like to have volunteer. And I came across a place in Jacksonville, Florida. It was a L'Arche community called Harbor House. And I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, know what L'Arche is. L'Arche is a group that provides services. Really, it's a group that provides homes to individuals who have developmental disabilities. So I went down in the summer there, and I lived in Jacksonville, Florida, at the L'Arche Harbor House community for the summer, and it was life changing. I guess is how I would state it. It was just a fantastic experience getting to know the people there, and I didn't forget that. When I graduated from college, I moved to after a stint as a teacher. I moved to Chicago, Illinois, and I started looking for jobs where I could do some more work like I did down in Jacksonville. And I took a job at a place called Victor C. Newman Association. It's a very large social service agency in Chicago, and they concentrated on providing a large array of services to people who have developmental disabilities or mental illness. Everything from group homes to they had a school. We had a job readiness program. I managed that program for a while. We taught job readiness skills to individuals with disabilities. Case management, I also worked there for quite a while. And we did all sorts of things for individuals who have disabilities. I worked there for 4 years, and I can say that that's the job that I enjoyed the most in my life, other than being an assistant district attorney. Those two jobs together, I loved them both. So after doing that for several years, I was actually going to law school at night while I was working at the Association. I got my law degree after a couple of years of work for a judge. I came back here to Niagara County and accepted a job as an assistant district attorney. Did that for a number of years, and I tried all different types of cases. I worked on all different types of cases. I'm sure everybody's generally familiar with the district attorney is. I'll just take 1 minute to kind of go over an overview of what the district attorney is. The district attorney is a lawyer whose job is to prosecute cases for people who have been charged with committing a crime. That's what the district attorney does. They represent the people of the state of New York in court prosecuting individuals who have So I've done all sorts of prosecutions. I've prosecuted individuals who had stolen money from the elderly. A lot of prosecutions of that type where I using financial records and things like that for a case against an individual who had taken advantage of an elderly person and stolen money from them. I present those cases to grand jury, and indictments would follow, court proceedings would follow. I've also done a lot of cases with violent crimes, including home invasion, burglaries, assaults, robberies, up to and including cases of murder. So I have a background that is appropriate for this job, and I have I believe the right the right views to be a good district attorney here in Niagara County, and I look forward to answering any questions that you have about the office, about my qualifications, about my views on any issues or matters that are important to you. Again, thank you very much for having me, and I'll take any questions that you have.
All right. So, under previous agreement, the first question's coming from Mr. Shaw. Mark.
All right. Thank you for joining us today, Brian. The first question I have is, what is the single most or single best asset that you will bring to this position?
My best asset is my experience as a felony trial prosecutor. From the day I started at the district attorney's office, I handled felony cases, complex felony cases, which I presented to the grand jury. I've had a large number of trials where I actually prosecuted individuals, gone through the trial, obtained convictions against violent individuals who are a danger to our community, and sought to keep their community safe. So I think my very best asset is experience doing this work.
Okay. In looking at your previous disability experience and your experience as a assistant district attorney, what do you think the biggest barrier is in people with disabilities and the court process? What do you think that might be?
So, in my experience, the biggest barrier is probably just awareness amongst people who might need to be aware. Might need to be aware that somebody might need some assistance or some accommodation made for them. That's really the biggest barrier, because in my experience, once people are made aware that somebody has a disability that needs some accommodation, they're more than willing to help. And that's certainly how my experience was with the district attorney's office. It would be if I'm elected, is first needs assistance. It could be understanding what's going on in the process. It could be the buildings are all accessible as far as if anyone needed some physical limitation that needed to be accommodated. That shouldn't be a problem at all. Really, it's just the understanding. It's just the awareness and understanding that people really are willing to work with somebody, whatever they want.
Okay. And I only have one other question for you. This came from our Mental Health Peer Connection program. In terms of, it's a question about police reform, but not actually. What do you think your role? What do you think your role is in dealing with the interaction between people with disabilities and law enforcement?
So my role would be, the district attorney's office usually, not always, but usually doesn't become involved in a case until well after the initial interaction with the police. So it's not until after an incident has happened, perhaps an investigation has ensued, and an arrest is made with the district attorney's office involved. So my ability to have any influence on that would come in the earlier phase of any type of planning or any type of policies that are put in place. So that's how I'd answer that question. Or once an arrest is made, or once a case comes to my office, if there are any individuals with disabilities who are involved in the case in any way, there's a number of ways you might be involved in a criminal case as a witness, as a victim, as a defendant. Just making sure that everybody who's involved is aware of any particular needs and addresses them properly.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming. For those people, the reminder is that our windows try to be around 10 minutes or so. I want to wish you best of luck in running for Niagara County District Attorney.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you.
It is absolutely our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And our final candidate to provide comment to us is Caroline I can never pronounce the name. Wojtasek. Wojtasek. Okay. Are we ready? We're ready.
Good evening. My name is Caroline Wojtasek, and I am your Niagara County District Attorney, and I'm running for Niagara County Court Judge and Surrogate in this year's November election. I am seeking the position that will be left vacant by the retirement of Judge Sarah Sheldon, who has been there for 2 decades, so a very important position in our community. And I'm here for you to get to know me better and learn more about my qualifications for this position. I'm very sorry not to meet you in person, and I'm always a big fan of human interaction. So it's a shame that we have to do it this way, but given the circumstances in the world today, this is the best we can do. I know that, and I hope that through my answers to your questions, you get to know me a little bit better. So the first question, which I think allows me to talk about, my experience for this job, is what is the single asset that I think I bring to this election and to the position of county court judge. So a little bit about my background, I think will help you understand why I think that my single best asset is my judgment. And that comes from 2.5 decades of work in the legal system, particularly in the criminal justice system. So when I graduated from law school, I went to the University of Buffalo. I worked there as a director of the domestic violence program at UB Law School, and organized volunteers to go into court and help advocate for victims in domestic violence situations. And so I knew that was the line of work I wanted to do while I was in school. And so I sought a position in the district attorney's office here in Niagara County, specifically in our special victims unit. So right out of law school, I came here and to Niagara County and got a position under Matt Murphy when he was the district attorney. And I worked in the special victims unit handling child abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, elder abuse. I was specially trained for over 12 years to handle those cases. I did murder cases that involved special victims. My training centered around the need to be particularly sensitive to victims of crime in those areas. It also, involved extensive training on how to handle the specific challenges that come with those types of cases in our criminal justice system. So I did that for 12.5 years. During that time, I handled thousands of cases, but I think most important is that I, during that time, tried more than 30 felony trials in county court. So I have extensive trial experience in front of the bench, and those cases involved many complex legal issues that had to be worked out. I had to work very closely with victims of crime that had suffered great indignities to assist them and compassionately navigate them through the criminal justice system and to help them find their voice in court. And so that really I felt like was my calling in life. And I felt blessed to do that work. And that's all I ever really thought or wanted to do. But then I was asked by Judge Sarah Sheldon, who presided over many of my trials, to be her confidential law clerk when her law clerk retired. And I took it as a great honor. I then got the opportunity to work now behind the bench with her, giving her advice on legal issues after doing legal research, writing hundreds of legal decisions on complex cases, particularly criminal cases. And that helped me hone my judgment. Now considering as a confidential law clerk, both sides of the aisle. Now my focus was not just on how to navigate victims of crime, but as the judge's law clerk, I now had to consider the fairness and the balance of decisions as it relates to both defendants and victims or complainants. Also with Judge Sheldon, I worked very closely with her on cases involving guardianships of incapacitated adults, or what we call AIPs, those in need of care for either themselves or for the management of their property or financial affairs under Article 81. And those cases are particularly sensitive because you have to keep in mind that you are, as a judge, possibly taking away people's personal liberties in making decisions and judgments for themselves. And so those are really careful investigations to do. You have to appoint attorneys to be the voice for not only the incapacitated adult, but also, have a court evaluator who you trust to give all of the information that's necessary to make an informed decision for the court. And the judges also meet personally, or they should, with the subject or the alleged AIP, so that you can see for yourself as the judge what the personal circumstances are of the person who's in question in the legal argument. It requires a personal touch. It should be a personal touch. And, I think I'm uniquely qualified to handle those situations, as I often had to deal with elder abuse cases in my line of work as an assistant DA. So those are the experiences I had before running for district attorney. I left my work with Judge Sheldon to run. I was elected in 2017. I have in my office 22 assistant district attorneys, including 15 support staff. I manage that office, and also really the buck stops with me. Any legal decision that is made on any case, in how we proceed, how we plea, how we pursue a case to trial, all lands on at my feet and on my shoulders. So while I have trusted colleagues around me and trained, and I'm responsible for the training of all of my assistant DAs to handle their cases effectively, efficiently, and fairly, really, I'm the end decision maker on many important or challenging cases. So I've been doing that for 4 years. So I was Judge Sheldon's law clerk for 7.5 years, and then now district attorney for almost 4 years. So through those experiences, over the past 25 years, I feel that I've been exposed to so many different circumstances. I've had to make important decisions, hard decisions for the right reasons on a daily basis. And I trust my judgment. I value my center and how I view cases. I am smart enough to know that I don't know everything. So real challenging cases, I have trusted advisors around me to give me their varied perspectives so that I can make the best judgment that I can make, and that I can live with and put my head down at night knowing that each challenging decision I've, given it my all in making that decision. And
Okay. We cut her off at that point because while our slots for each candidate are normally 10 minutes, the candidate sent us 3 videos totaling 45 minutes of information about her candidacy. So we encourage you to go to our webpage and listen to her full video presentation, which I would assume follows our outline fairly closely. And I think you'll get to know a lot more about Caroline. And as always, we wish her the best in her campaign for public office. She is the last candidate signed up for today. So I do want to give folks one last opportunity to provide comment or question to us in the feeds about anything that you might want us to answer for you, or comment about what you've heard today. We're waiting patiently to see if something comes back from the feeds. I have nothing. So I want to thank you all very much for spending this time with us, both today and Tuesday. I do want to encourage you, please, to vote, cast your ballot, and use your right as a citizen. Remember, if you need assistance in voting, in getting your ballot to the polling place, or getting a ride, all you have to do is call our Independence Express program, 716-836-0822, extension 150, like it now says on the crawl. And we're going to help you get you or your vote to the place where it needs to go. Voting is the only way that we're going to shift the things that concern or empower us. So go out and do that. Mark, your last words, sir?
I just want to say thank you to everybody that's here, and remind everybody as well to go out and vote, make your voice heard.
Yes, and our capable backstage assistant Jillian reminds us that all of Tuesday's videos are also on YouTube. So if you were here today but weren't with us on Tuesday, and you want to go back and look at the state and federal candidate appearances, you can absolutely do that. www.youtube.com/WNYIL. Thank you so much. And we now conclude our broadcast day.